On the Oregon frontier, survival wasn't just about grit. It was about daring to claim your place in a land that did not want you. Letitia Carson was born enslaved, yet she carved out a life of freedom on the far edge of the frontier. She may not have been a running gun like other characters of the West, but she faced down prejudice, hardship, and the wilderness itself. Twice she took powerful men to court and won, and in doing so, she became one of the first black women in the West to secure justice under the law. This is a story of resilience, of courage, and of a woman who refused to be written out of history. And thank you for the listener who recommended her. This one's for you. Well, let's get into it, shall we? My name's Steven, and welcome to Wild West Deep Dives. Letitia Carson was born enslaved in Kentucky sometime between 1814 and 1818. Almost nothing is known of her early years, and the record of her life only truly begins in May of 1845, when she and Irish immigrant David Carson joined nearly 1,000 other immigrants heading west from Missouri. David was born in Ireland in 1800 and likely crossed the Atlantic in the 1810s or early 1820s. How he and Letitia came together and when she gained her freedom remains a mystery. What we do know is that the two traveled side by side on the Oregon Trail, and along the North Fork of the Platte River in what later would become Nebraska, Letitia gave birth to their first child, Martha Jane. And during that kind of trial in the midst of the journey showed the true grit that would define her life. By fall of 1845, the Carsons reached Oregon. That December, David pushed south into the mid-Willamette Valley, and under the provisional government's land laws, staked a married couple's claim of 640 acres in the Soap Creek Valley. In the spring of 1846, they began to carve out a new home. A cabin rose, they planted potatoes, likely set an orchard, and stocked their land with cattle and hogs, though it was Letitia who became known as the primary cattle raiser. The Applegate Trail ran close by, and it's believed the Carsons sold produce, dairy, and meat to the wary travelers who passed their way. From a beginning cloaked in slavery and mystery, Letitia Carson was building a life of freedom, work, and resilience on the Oregon frontier. The Carsons added a son, Adam, to the family in 1849. The next year, officials reduced Carson's claim to 320 acres, most likely due to the fact that David and Letitia weren't married in the court of law. The Donation Land Act provided 640 acres to married couples only. In September of 1852, David Carson died in Benton County without leaving a will. Soon after, Greenberry Smith, a fellow 1845 immigrant and neighbor from Soap Creek, was appointed administrator of David's estate. Smith did not recognize Letitia or her children as rightful heirs, whether because of her race or because he still viewed her as enslaved, though slavery was outlawed in the Oregon Territory. In early January 1853, Smith held an auction of David's belongings. To survive, Letitia was forced to spend over $100 to buy back the most basic of her family's possessions: bedding, cookware, a few head of cattle, and some other goods. But Letitia was not willing to accept being left hung out to dry. In February 1854, she filed suit against Smith as the estate's administrator. She was represented by Corvallis attorney Andrew Thayer. Letitia claimed that he, David Carson, would make her his sole heir, or that he would give her his entire property upon his death. But, according to the Oregon Secretary of State website, this was not put into writing. Therefore, if Smith did not recognize her as David's legal heir, then she was entitled to wages for her 7 years of labor with David, valued at $3,750 plus $5,000 in damages. $3,750 in 1854 is roughly $144,000 today, with $5,000 being about $192,000. She also demanded nearly $2,500 for the unlawful sale of her cattle. But over time, she reduced her labor claim to $1,000. In May of 1855, after testimony from neighbors and even members of the Carson family, a jury of Benton County men ruled in favor on the labor issue, though they only awarded her $300, along with $222.20 in court costs. The $522.20 she won is worth roughly $20,000 today. But Letitia and her attorney pressed on. In August of 1855, she filed a second suit, this time focused on the cattle. A neighbor testified that she had raised and owned most of them herself. On the 25th of October 1856, a federal judge and jury delivered their verdict. Letitia Carson was to receive $1,200 plus nearly $200 in costs. Altogether across both suits, she secured over $1,700 in damages, roughly $65,000 today. An extraordinary victory at a time when Oregon's exclusionary laws barred black immigrants from owning land, filing suit, or even residing in the territory beyond 6 months. After these hard-won legal battles, Letitia and her children eventually moved south to Douglas County. For years, she lived with a hardy Eloff family in the upper Cow Creek Valley, where she worked for the household and served as a respected community midwife. In May of 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Homestead Act into law, opening the way for ordinary Americans, including freed slaves, to claim and settle federal land. Unlike Oregon's earlier exclusionary laws, the act did not bar claimants by race. On the 17th of June, 1863, Letitia Carson stepped forward and filed a claim for 154 acres on South Myrtle Creek in Douglas County. She filed as a widow and a single mother of two, though she did not describe herself as a freed slave. For 6 years, Letitia worked the land, building a ranch that included the 2-story house, barn, smokehouse, cattle, pigs, and an orchard of more than 100 fruit trees. By 1870, the census recorded her holding real estate valued at $1,000 and personal property worth $625. On the 1st of October 1869, her claim was certified by President Ulysses S. Grant, and she became the only black woman to have a claim under the Homestead Act of 1862. Letitia Carson lived until 1888, passing away on the 2nd of February. She is buried a few miles from her homestead property at the Stevens Cemetery in Myrtle Creek. The book, A Light in the Wilderness, a historical novel written by Jane Kirkpatrick, is based on the facts of the life of Letitia Carson. Letitia Carson's journey from slavery to homesteader was a triumphant of grit and resilience. She fought in court, claimed her own land, and left a legacy that we will not soon forget. Her story is a reminder that the West was built by those who refused to be erased. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe and maybe leave a comment, and share Wild West Deep Dives with a friend. I greatly appreciate y'all's support. We will see y'all next time, and remember, when in doubt, shoot straight, shoot fast. God bless.